Welcome all. Thanks for coming. This is the ArcGIS Maps SDK for JavaScript key highlights session. And I'm here joined by Julie and Arno, and they're going to walk through these key highlights. If you've got questions, you can submit them at the end or use the Pigeonhole app. That should be linked from your agenda to put questions in, and we'll also be monitoring that. So with that, we'll hand it over to you guys.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, and definitely we're happy to take live questions too, so you can raise your hand. All right, so what Arno and I have done is kind of look through some of the biggest updates or ones that him and I are particularly excited about. Very small subset of everything that's gone on in the last year. So we're just going to be taking turns showing you the things that, we want to talk about. And we'll also be highlighting some sessions that are related to each of the different topics. I'm going to start by talking about the new Maps SDK components, a huge push forward in how you can develop with the JavaScript SDK. Then we'll talk about layers, new layer types, and different ways of working with your data, updates to that topic area. Visualization performance, editing, and then a few random updates we wanted to share. Okay, so Maps SDK components. And you guys saw this in plenary. Omar did a great demo on the Maps SDK components. I thought I would just kind of take a quick step back and talk a little bit about what are web components real quick and why I think they are particularly exciting. They're really like Lego bricks. It's a way for us to encapsulate functionality into something you can easily plug into any application, regardless of framework you're using or patterns you want to use. It's a W3C standard. And if you know how to add a button, like a simple button to your application, then you can add any other web component, like a Lego brick or some piece of a mapping functionality to your application. So it really allows us to encapsulate that functionality, different parts of ArcGIS web experience and deliver it to you in a way that you can just simply add it to your application, set up properties of how you want it to behave, and you're off and running. So we released, the very first release of map components was in October of last year. We had our second release in February. You can check it out there on the SDK site, find components. And just to kind of like relate the concept of what you might already be familiar with to what this looks like as web components. So what you see here on the left is how, the typical way of creating a map, right? You create a web map or you create if you're not using web maps, you just create the map object and then you create the map view and it would look something like this. And then if you're doing the web component approach, you're looking at just the markup like that ArcGIS map tag. It's pointing to a web map ID, and the important thing to know about is that you still have access to all the underlying business logic that you did before. So really what that means is that there's no, we're not taking away any functionality. You can still build the same application in both approaches. It's just a new way of building apps. So thinking about the same sort of paradigm, instead of looking at the map, let's look at widgets. So if you wanted to add like a legend to your application, it's adding it to the bottom right. This is how it might look as a web component. ArcGIS legend tag and then a positioning in the bottom right. And again, many of you are using the widget view models to do different things with the business logic. You still have access to the business logic when you're using web components. So there's, you have that simplicity, but you still have the power at the same time. So to build something very simple like this, which has the map and the legend, the code would look something like this. A lot of the demos that we've shown are very, very simple, but this is doing like sophisticated shadow analysis in a 3D scene, and this is all the code it took to make this application. So it's pretty impressive, what you can do today and what you're going to be able to do in the future as we continue to release more ArcGIS experiences encapsulated as web components. So we recently introduced, in the February release, we introduced charts, and you saw that in the plenary session. I'm going to do a quick demo to show you what that's all about. But this is a look in Map Viewer for how you probably, or many of you have been configuring charts as part of your web map or your feature layers before. That part was already there. But the way you would consume those charts was in different ArcGIS apps like Instant Apps or Experience Builder. What we're doing now is now you can actually use those chart components as web components in your custom applications. That's the big update. And you have access to a wide range of charts that you can either define in the web mapper layer and just load it easily into your app, that configuration, or you can define it directly in code. In the plenary demo, he showed both approaches. So I'm going to show you a quick demo. So this is a map showing a college scorecard. And this feature layer has some charts defined in it. And you can configure these charts through Map Viewer in the same way as before. And let's let this baby load. Maybe I'll refresh. Oh, that's there. Okay. So you can configure the charts the way you'd like. You can configure multiple charts, any number of charts, and save it to your feature layer or your web map. And then when you go to the code, this is like an example app I built with the JavaScript SDK. This is the chart component that I loaded. And you still have access to various functionality that's part of the chart component. Since you save multiple charts showing different aspects of the data to one feature layer, I can then go, create different charts and display that. Oh, this is probably a little bit too zoomed in. So different types of charts and, build in interactivity with the chart. I think I wanted to show you the code of what this looks like. Can you guys see that okay in the back? Okay, so this code is getting the configuration from the feature layer. So see how it says feature layer charts 1? That's because it's an array of charts. As I mentioned, you can have any number of charts that you've created saved to the feature layer. Gets the config, then the scatter plot was defined in markup in some other part of the application. I get the config from the feature layer, I assigned it to that chart element, then I attach the feature layer so that the scatter plot knows what data it's working with, and then it gets a reference to the view so that it can actually do that map interactivity and adjust based on extent and so forth. This part of the code is adding in that interactivity with the map. So if I select something in the chart, then I want it to also select it. You can kind of see the cyan color, select it on the map as well. So yeah, charts is a great addition to the Maps SDK. And there's plenty of sessions covering the components. Honestly, I recommend all of them. This is it's a monumental update to the SDK and how we've really adapt or changed or evolved our development internally at Esri. So it's really something that we feel that is worth learning about this week. And now let's talk about layers, and I'll hand it over to Arno.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'd like to kick it off by talking about some of the out-of-the-box content that we provide in the JavaScript SDK. 3D Basemaps is something we released last year already, and it's been an ongoing effort. It started by providing a layer with 3D buildings and that are now available as 3D basemaps directly through the Basemap gallery, and some of the things you can do with those, I'd like to switch over to a demo. So this is a web scene here where we're visualizing some bike lanes and bike routes in a city in Switzerland. And as mentioned, you can now in the...
Oh, the screen.
Oh, you have to get out of just present
Awesome.
mode.
Thank you. So let's start displays and
Just end the presentation.
I'll just end the presentation. How's that? Yep. Awesome. So these were the bike lanes I was talking about. Just importing as a 2D layer into our scene. And yeah, through the Basemap gallery here in Scene Viewer, I can now select the various base maps, the most popular one being the topographic one, providing buildings, trees, and 3D labels. Now to visualize your 2D data in a 3D context. So this is really a nice way to visualize 2D data in a real-world context. And we can do things like change the symbology of our bike lanes to something more 3D. And what we can also do with the base map is mask out areas. So we can generally say if we want to have buildings and trees and labels, we can select them individually, but also mask out areas where we have our own 3D data. So for example, this neighborhood, I'm creating a mask that will make the 3D base map buildings go away, and I can bring in my own 3D data here, visualizing a project, a new development project in that city. So this is one of the classic use cases of 3D base maps. And because you can persist everything in the web scene, the mask, the selected base map, and also your own 3D data, just want to make a point of kind of showing how you can then bring that into your own custom apps. So this is a sample that uses a Places API to query some points of interest around a point that you click on the map. Here showing some museums. And I basically edited this sample by replacing the map view with a scene view. And then the map by loading this web scene and giving it the ID of the item ID of my web scene. And I basically get the same sample here loading the web scene that I previously authored together with the mask and the 3D base map. And I can use the same API to query points of interest here, theaters around my development project. So this was one of the data types, one of the contents that we provide, being 3D base maps. Another thing I would like to quickly mention are new web style symbols in 3D. So we always had the realistic trees for vegetation, and now we also have a new type of trees. It's called low poly vegetation, which are an optimized cartoonish version of these trees. And they really work well in schematic environments such as the scene that we had in the plenary for uploading 3D models. You might have noticed we used these trees here in the surrounding of this building. And a tip, if you create scenes like this, a nice little tweak is kind of giving the trees a visual variable, a rotation variable, just with a random rotation to make everything look a little more realistic than if they would just kind of have the same shape. So let me try to get back to my presentation. I hope you now see the right version. Yeah. So one more topic. All right, here we go. Something we got asked quite a bit is support for 3D tiles, which you can now add to your scenes, either through Scene Viewer, if you have an item, but you can also, through the JavaScript SDK, add a layer pointing directly to a service providing 3D tiles. So it's the mesh version of 3D tiles. The object ones we're working on and plan to provide support for that as well. But you can bring that into your JavaScript SDK apps. And with this, back to you.
Okay, now we'll talk about time. This has been, really a huge project because it spanned really all of ArcGIS, accounted for in pop-ups and feature table editing within Arcade and Calcite. Just a huge collaboration across teams to improve time support across the board. Many customers have told us they work with data that just has the date, or all you care about is the time. Now you can work with it in that way. Also support for time zones. So say, for example, you want, when your web map is loaded, always to work, to show up with the same time zone. You can save that in the web map. And then also another field is time offset. And so the idea there is like, say you work with data that spans across multiple time zones, but you want to kind of like standardize it to really not take that into account and just display data kind of uniformly across all the time zones. Like in this crash data, it's using that time offset to display the crashes just by time of day. It doesn't matter what time it was in California versus New York. You just want to see a continuous look at that data. So that's been, yeah, that's a big update for time. Jeremy, I know you love talking about time. You want to say anything else about that one?
No, I think you're good,
I
Julie.
can't do off the spot. I know you're just moderator.
Wow. I see how she is.
Another one that you definitely saw in plenary, because this was my demo, is the oriented imagery. I'm really excited about this one, as a lot of people know, because I feel like this is something that, you know, many people have asked for the capability to display and work with street level imagery. It's not limited to street level imagery. You could work with, you know, drone inspection imagery, you know, close range imagery, and you know, you could attach a phone or like a GoPro to a garbage truck and just capture imagery as it's, you know, driving around the city. And when you think about it, that's really increasing the temporal resolution of the city or the area or the construction project that you're working on in a very low cost, easy way to do it. It's using the metadata that's captured. You know, really what I displayed in plenary, this is a demo actually, as the image is moving around and you see the location on the map move around, or the area that image is covering, the accuracy of that is only as good as the metadata. So if you're using a really, you know, really sophisticated camera that's, you know, that's capturing very accurate, detailed location data, that you know, relationship between the pixels to the location is also going to be very, very accurate. On a phone, it's a little bit less accurate, but you still have that really fresh imagery that you can go and inspect or you know, keep an eye on of any area of interest of yours. The most recent update to orient imagery, or the biggest one, would be the 360 imagery support. But there's a wide range of formats already supported. And there's a lot of plans to continue more functionality for oriented imagery, including 3D support. So yeah, this is a really cool new feature. And you can also save it to the web map. You know, it's a fully supported piece that ties into the WebGIS story.
Good timing, Julie, because Brian in the audience asked if we could use aerial 360-degree panoramas as well.
Yes, Brian, you can use 360 panorama images. Oh yeah, I'm going to do a demo. So this is a different demo from what I did in plenary. So, you know, this isn't anything strange. Really, all we're looking at, this is like really under the hood, this image location. This is powered by feature layers. So these are all individual features that indicate, you know, where the photos were taken. So I can, you know, turn them off. The important thing is really the footprint, because that tells you where you have the imagery. So I can click on the map, and then I didn't check to see what we'd be looking at. Okay, everything's fine. But yeah, you can click on the image, and then this viewer is a new UI component that's part of the JavaScript SDK. So let me show you what that code looks like. Let's zoom in quite a bit. So it's pretty straightforward. It's loading a web map here, creating the map view just as, you know, we've done before. The key part to this application is creating the orient imagery viewer. It needs a reference to the view so that it can have that, you know, interaction with the map. And then the other important part is giving it the layer. So which layer will it work with? Well, you have a oriented imagery layer that's part of the web map. And so it loads that from the web map, then it ties that up to the viewer, which is the UI component, and then that's it. That's really the only code needed. So really the functionality is all just contained within the layer and the viewer, the oriented imagery viewer. And just to, you know, make a quick point that, you know, I'm pretty amazed at where the web map has come, you know, where it started and where it is today. You know, we really used to talk about this, you know, as like data flowing from application or from desktop to mobile to to web, and that's an amazing part. Then you have all the visualization capabilities that's, you have this consistency of visualization. You make an update the web map, then all the apps see it. So that's always been the story. But, the last few years, we're like, it's also about the experience. You're like configuring the experience you want your end users to have, whether it's through editing and how you want the form to be for the end users. Arcade and the pop-up. How do you want your pop-up to look? Time. How should time work in your web map? Bringing in oriented imagery layers. It really is it's a whole like authoring tool around the experience that you're kind of bringing to life in the app. So you're maintaining the code pretty slim and still bringing in pretty powerful functionality.
It's come a long way. Like the first web map was out in 2011, so 13 years ago. And every day there's 15,000 web maps made. And so yeah, it's definitely, we're all in on it, and we've been adding capabilities over the years, so yeah.
Yeah. So there's plenty of sessions covering working with different layers, working with web maps. We don't have time to talk about everything in this session, of course. So that's why we're recommending these different sessions, so you kind of like have an idea where you want to dive in deeper. For example, I don't have time to talk about ArcGIS knowledge, but there's a great session planned for that. You can deep dive into Arcade and learn all about, is this your session, Jeremy? The latest techniques for building web apps using web maps?
Yes, Kelly Hutchins and I. Kelly's the lead developer on the Instant Apps team, and she's been working with web maps her whole dev lead career. So we'll cover what's a deeper dive on what's in web maps, and then how you can use them as a developer.
Cool. All right, so now we'll go to visualization, performance, interactivity, and capabilities.
All right, let's talk about performance. Slides look good this time. So this is really a topic where we constantly improve the API, the SDK, whether it's what data flows between the server and the client, but also what is happening on the client itself. One of the topics I want to point out here first is improvements around setups that involve virtualized environments. So if you're connecting to a virtual machine, we detect this environment, and we improve the rendering to make sure that this experience is as smooth as possible. And I encourage you to read up on a blog post that we posted a while ago that provides a whole lot of recommendations of how to get the most out of this setup. Then there's been a number of improvements between the last and the current release around smart mapping, especially with heat maps. You can see that on the upper right. The way we generate the heat map from a bunch of points directly in the client has really improved the time it takes to create this visualization, but also the number of render calls when you have a map with complex symbology. Again, just shortening the time until you actually see the information loading or becoming visible on the map. So these have been a few 2D samples. Also on the 3D side, we improved the visual quality by introducing a concept where when you navigate in the 3D scene, we show a little less quality to make sure that the navigation is smooth. And as soon as the view becomes stationary, we add a whole bunch of effects that previously you only got when you cranked up the quality either directly through the API by increasing the quality setting, or in Scene Viewer, you have this quality setting in the settings somewhere, making things like the water reflections appear or the ambient occlusion you might have noticed in the scene I previously demoed. And this change has some interesting implications. You were able to crank up the quality for 3D scenes directly through the API or SDK before, but if you use the scene in other applications across ArcGIS, like story maps or instant apps in dashboards, then there was no way to get these high quality visuals, especially like things like the water reflections. And now with this change, basically anyone who's looking at a story map that uses a 3D scene, they get these high quality visuals by default. More improvements also on the label side. So in 3D we have crisper labels also by default, making them more readable, especially the billboarded ones. We made sure that they're not cut off across tiles. And then in 2D, we're using the same algorithm as Pro, making sure that the label is always inside a certain polygon. You see a sample of this here on the lower right. And that's just another example of making sure that your maps look the same across the platform by using the same implementation as ArcGIS Pro uses in that area. Want to talk about attributes?
Yes, I'll talk about attributes. Okay, so we've added ability to access the attributes that are baked into vector tile layers. The way that works is using the hit test API. The hit test is something that you can already use for like feature layer, other types of layers. So that now works on vector tile layers. It's important to note that is returning attributes only. It's not returning geometry. Some people that are building, for example, applications that are, they've chosen to use vector tile layers. You're doing a very, very simple app. You can use this approach to access the attributes, but I also want to caution you that as you add more and more data into those vector tile layers, you start bloating the vector tile layers, which can really impact performance. So I would always recommend that you kind of judge or really test out your data, visualizing it as vector tile layers, and build in the interactivity you want with vector tile layers if it's very minimal attributes that you're needing to use. And also compare the performance with feature layers, which are also has a tiled approach of how we load and cache, really do cacheable queries, so you have really fast performance with feature layers, where you have full interactivity capabilities because you have the access to geometry, and it has all these optimizations for working with attributes. So this is a really great update, but it is something that you should be kind of, before you jump into this, kind of test both approaches, be aware of your requirements, how your data, how large your data is, and you can test both. This is an update that's related to that. We added, now that we have the support for accessing attribute data within vector tile layers, now some of the base maps that have places information as part of the base map, now you can access that and display it in your applications. So this is available in the streets base map and the streets night base map. Or is it called Streets Dark? There's a dark one and a light one for streets, and you can access it in both of those. And I believe we're going to be extending it to other base maps. Yeah, so this is an interesting update for some people. And plenty of sessions about visualization. As Jeremy mentioned in plenary, this is definitely an area that we're really passionate about, and no shortage of sessions for you to attend. And really dive in, whether you're working with really large data sets and you need to create meaningful visualizations with those data sets in a performant way. That's a great session. I don't want to pick any favorite children here of all these good sessions, but there's really a great list for you to choose from. There's also a bunch of 3D sessions. Yeah, do you love 3D as much as Arno? Well, you should definitely check out these sessions. The first one, I'm the moderator for that one, and so I better plug it. It's not just 3D. I believe there will be at least one 2D app in there, but it's heavily 3D. But it's Raluca and Sajid, who both are what I feel like are artists when it comes to building beautiful applications. So I'm really excited about that.
So I guess Julie does have her favorites.
No. I'll make sure I pick out another one next time. But yeah, lots of great sessions. And at the end of the session, if you guys have any questions about any of the sessions, you're like trying to plan your day, your week, because there's so many competing times. It's the only way we can offer, 50 sessions during the week. You can come up and ask us, and we're happy to talk to you about them. All right, let's talk about editing. And Arno, why don't you take that?
I thought you were taking
Oh,
that.
is this mine? Oh yeah, this is mine. Sorry, I'll keep going. So we now support editing related records. This was also part of my demo and plenary. If you have feature layers that participate in a relationship, whether it's or feature to feature or feature to table relationship, you can edit them. If it's set up as part of the form that you want to display, you want to work with the related records, it'll just automatically produce that UI inside the editor widget or component to be able to work with the related records. So you can add additional related records, delete them, modify them. You have full access to all the related records. The top right is doing the feature to table, then down here it's doing the feature to feature editing of related records. Also, the ability to work with branch versions. So the new capability has been, oops.
I think it's,
Oh, is it?
are these my slides?
Oh yeah, sorry. I didn't go to me. There's mine. Let me play this. Oops. Okay, yeah, now we're rolling. You can work with data if you're working with multiple versions. So the new version component, this actually was developed only as a web component. There's no corresponding widget in this case. And it allows you to edit against whichever version, like pick the version you want to edit against. You can also, there's a versioning service class where you can actually control version, like you can rename it, you can delete, you can post, reconcile. It has like full versioning capabilities for you to work if you're working with a multi-version data set. This one's you.
Yeah, so besides a lot of the schematic improvements that we have on the relationship between layers or attributes, we also do a lot with interactive. There we go, now it's playing. I guess you already saw the GIF before, but yeah, it really being able to draw features in a map or in a 3D web scene by adding editing constraints. And that means that when you create features, you can define like how long a certain line is, what angle it has, or also in 3D you can determine at which elevation a vertex is drawn. And this is really powerful, especially in combination with snapping. And it's also one of the success stories that we were able to push this out in 2D and 3D simultaneously. And we will continue to work on this, adding more constraints, for example, being able to enter exact coordinates, again, supporting both 2D and 3D. Then a big topic that we also presented, Sasha and Stefan presented in the plenary, is the 3D upload. This has been also ongoing for the last few years. We released it in beta last year. Right now in the web, it is still in beta while we're kind of working on some of the final topics with between Web Mercator and projected coordinate systems. Make sure it works in all scenarios. But yeah, it really allows you to bring in your own 3D models, upload them to a scene layer, and like various formats automatically get converted on the server side, whether it's Collada, some of the Autodesk formats, or the IFC that is used across BIM. Snapping also works if you want to position your model precisely. We saw that in the plenary. And what's also interesting about this topic is that it's not only about uploading and sharing your 3D models, but it also allows you to start accessing the geometry of scene layers in the client. So you can query the scene layer directly either for the 3D mesh geometry and then really work with the vertices that you get back. Or you can also query the layer for the footprint of your building, as we did in the plenary, and build workflows based on that. But you can also access the REST API to get the originally uploaded file. So for example, if you upload an IFC file, you can download that file again and work with it either in the client or also on the server side using the REST API. Do you want to say something about the session?
Oh, sure. Yeah, these are all sessions targeting editing topics. The first one is all about building apps with the JavaScript SDK that's doing web editing. The next one is probably more focused on like the preparation side, like how to create the web maps and how to really, pack all that tailored experience that you want to come alive in your applications in the web map. So configuring the form, working with the form, and other aspects. And that's not specific to web, it also applies to Pro and native as well. Yeah, and then we don't have time to cover utility network updates in this session, but there's a session dedicated to that if that's something that you're interested in. Oh, yep. And now we will talk a little bit about, this is our like random section of things that Arno and I just wanted to throw into the session. I'll try to see, there's bright lights on me, but can you raise your hand if you've used the feature widget, singular feature widget?
See a few.
Yeah, there's several. So, okay, so if you're familiar with the feature widget, that was something we introduced several releases ago, which basically allows you to take the contents inside the pop-up, so anything you would have created in the pop-up template, whether it's media or attributes or whatever you're displaying in the meat of the pop-up, basically take that and just put it anywhere you want in the DOM. So you could put it outside the map, you could create any sort of experience, and just gives you that ability to display that content some other place other than here hovering, in the pop-up itself. So that was what was there before. The features widget is very, very similar in that you could do that same thing by putting the pop-up content somewhere else. But it also gives you the ability to work with all the pop-up experience that is around the pop-up. So in this example, we have it on the left-hand side in the panel. And notice you have the zoom to here. This is a custom action that was added. You have paging. If there was related records, you have the whole related records experience, basically the entire experience. Or if you've clicked on multiple features, that all shows up. So you can really think of it as the entire pop-up experience that you've put somewhere else or however you've wanted to design your application using the widget. This is just a quick example of an app that we built that uses this is the feature widget here on the left. You can see it has, looks like I'm gonna slow it down a little bit. This looks like it's built, this whole thing built in the application, but this is all defined inside the web map. This is all pop-up template stuff, which is pretty awesome how much you can put into a pop-up these days. So it's put on the left-hand side. This whole app was built with Calcite. And so as we change the aspect or the size of the screen, then we're moving the features widget down here, to build this responsive design. So it's just kind of this isn't a specific thing that features widget was built for. It's really just giving you the flexibility to create whatever experience. And it can be useful for building like a nice responsive app where you want to kind of move content around, for example, based on the screen size. The default pop-up does have the capability of docking, so you do have that capability as well if you just use the regular pop-up. So be aware of that, but this is just an additional option you have available. Value picker widget is small but mighty. It's got, if you look at this crazy app on the left, we would never build anything like this to actually be used, but it's showing every flavor or configuration you could do with the value picker widget. So the idea of this guy is allow you to easily step or play through a list of values. And it's very configurable, whether you want it vertical or horizontal. Do you want it to be a drop down? Do you want a slider? There are all these different like flavors of it, and you can kind of just configure it to build in, your experience. I have 2 quick demos to show you using Value Picker. So this one, let's just look at the app real quick. Jeremy, I don't think you've seen this one. I think you're gonna like it. So what it's doing is, you can see it's playing through the different values here: corn, wheat, no predominance. So this is it's mapping these crops based on predominance. And then as I move the value picker into the different values, you can see that it's filtering on the map based on that value. Well, what's particularly cool about this app is the value picker doesn't know anything about the data. What we did was we used smart mapping to get all possible values. So we just pointed to the service, get all unique values, and then we populated this dynamically based on all the possible values we found, and then played basically using a filter capability on the layer view to do a client-side filter to play through those. This is just one example, but really, you can really use the value picker for anything. This is the playing effect where it goes through and plays. You can change the speed that you want it to play at. So that's one example. This is a similar example where I took actually maybe I'll just show you, what was this? This is Flash. Well, I wonder if I can, no, it doesn't. Oh, wait, I just saw it. Did you see there? Okay, I don't want to search for it right now, but so what I wanted to show you is this was a sample in the SDK that we added quite a long time ago, and I basically created a new application using Calcite this is the Calcite nav, and then I was using the value picker to just show how you can go through a list of values, between the different seasons of showing the flash floods by season, and of course you can play through it. And let me show you what the code looks like for that. One important thing to note about Value Picker is it doesn't really have knowledge of any data. Basically, you populate it and handle the events. You basically are controlling, what it's doing to the map. It's very flexible in that way. So here I'm just creating the feature layer. I'm populating the combo box using these different seasons because I know this is in my data, and then basically listening for the events for when the view's ready, and then as the value picker changes values, then I change the filter on the flood layer. So yeah, there's endless different ways you can use the value picker. It's just another way for you can build in some sort of interactivity into your application. Okay, so now it's Arno's turn.
There's a few sessions.
Oh yeah. So this is a list of sessions that are all about building your UI, building your experience. Another big area of focus for us. The Calcite what's new and road ahead will be good to kind of get a scoop of the whole last year and what they're working on the next year. There's some big things coming there. A couple more sessions actually 3 more sessions on Calcite. So the eyes on design, if you see that 3 from the bottom, that one I'm really curious about. This one's being put on by our creative lab. I'm not sure if we've talked about this before, but we have a creative lab that works fully embedded in development, and they really design the experience and they do testing, they do all the experience that's then handed over to developers and to build it out. And the creative lab's actually putting this session on to teach about some of their practices and how they build intuitive design. So I'm very curious about that one. We haven't had that kind of session before. This Better UX with Pop-ups is always really popular. And this one here, this is if you're using the widget view models, or if you need to use the underlying business logic that we provide with widgets, well, how can you create your experience on top of that? So this will be the first year that they'll be showing, kind of bringing in web components as part of that, and still using the underlying business logic available. So that will be an interesting session. Okay, now let's go to Arno.
Yeah, two ways you can extend the 3D JavaScript SDK. First one is custom render nodes. We saw that in the plenary. Stefan presented in the end how he highlighted that building. So this is a continuation of a concept we called external renders in the API. This is now deprecated. We're replacing this with custom render nodes, which is a more powerful API to give you access to the WebGL context and also the various frame buffers. For now, it's really a few frame buffers that we give access to, for example, the colors or the depth, allowing you to do these effects like the tilt shift that we see here in the screenshot. That's a fun sample. I encourage you to at least go and try it out. There's also a bunch of WebGL code showing you how to do these things. Here for this tilt shift effect. Right, and then the second topic that is related. So we always get asked if we can support larger screens in the web for the web, and it's tricky because we only get so much memory available from the browser, and so we would like to provide support for bigger screens, but it's really often just limited by what you're able to do in the browser. So one workaround that we're providing for this is an open source project that you can use to demo a scene on multiple screens. And you basically have, for each screen, you have a client that connects to a server and only shows part of the camera on that screen. And this allows you to basically scale a web scene to multiple screens. And it's open source basically to allow you to really implement specific workflows depending on what you want to present on the screen or for the type of audience you have and what interactions you might want to show. So right now the project as it is supports camera animations, basically anything that you can store in a slide. So slides are the 3D version of bookmarks. But if you wanted to implement specific interactions with the web scene and sync that across these screens, then you would be able to with that project. Session I would like to highlight here, so this is not 3D specific. This is a session that covers, I believe, two topics. The first one by Fred, diving into how components were created, look under the hood. And then Stefan is going to talk about extending your 3D scenes with the render nodes as we've seen in the plenary. So a bit of a deep dive on how to actually do this. And I think we're at the end of the
Yep, so
presentation.
yeah, please share any feedback you have. Any ideas you have, or if you liked it, let us know. And with that, let's open it up for questions.
All right, we've got a lot of questions. I've answered a bunch online, but we'll just go through these real fast, and then we can take some audience ones, Julie. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of metadata is needed for 360-degree panoramas? Coordinates and heading?
Oh God, that's too advanced. There's an oriented imagery demo theater.
Okay, good.
And actually, there's two demo theaters on oriented imagery. One is all about like automating the publishing and processing of oriented imagery for oriented imagery layers. And there's a second one that's all about building apps with oriented imagery. Someone came out from UAE that works on oriented imagery that we from the team that will be presenting in both of those sessions. So whoever asked that.
Yep. I also answered another question in the chat about how do you actually publish these? And there's a GP tool, but definitely talk to, is it Athul?
No.
Minoja?
No. I'll think of it. Keep going.
Gopal.
No.
Okay, we'll stop talking here. Okay, Julie, here's another one. I read one of the new updates for the SDK is that now you can use out-of-the-box UI icon without much coding.
Oh, yep, I know what that one is. So, many of the widgets have calcite icons. They used to be like the icon font that it was using, but now you can actually replace that and use a calcite icon. Like for example, like the expand widget, you can specify which icon you want to use. If there's also layer list has that for when you're building in the custom elements inside layer list. So yeah, you can use the calcite icons. You reference it by name of the calcite icon to be able to use that inside the widgets or components.
Cool. I've got a couple here for Arno. Arno, when will the draw orientation of complex polygons rings not matter for scene view? And that one you might need more info.
For polygons, I think that shouldn't matter, but I would be interested to know more about that one.
Yeah, maybe
So
come up
please
and
come
talk
by
to
the booth.
Arno.
Yeah,
Or the booth.
I'll be at the booth the rest of the afternoon. So.
All right, Arno's at the booth the rest of the day. Will other formats with no geodata be accepted? OBJ files, for example?
Yeah, OBJ. So for the 3D upload, we certainly support some of the, like native computer graphics formats, OBJ, but also like USD, GLTF, what's supported in the browser anyway. So those, yeah.
There's some similar one like Collada, IFC, FBX, CWG.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think, in the release notes, we have a list of the formats that we support. IFC, we currently support 2.3. We're working on IFC 4 support, which should come out this year.
Okay, cool. Julie, I don't know if you want this.
Yeah,
or
wait,
if you want me.
hold on. This is the session, and the person is Shruti is the name.
Oh, okay, thank you.
The two oriented. You could just search for oriented imagery, and you'll get the two. Okay.
Julie, are components going to replace widgets?
Oh gosh, that is a good question. The answer is eventually, yes. Eventually, it's going to be a very, very long time frame. It'll be incremental. We will also continue to support the underlying business logic, so we won't just take the view models away. But eventually, widgets will start, like for example, as we build new components, like you have the versioning component, that's only a component. So new capabilities we'll be introducing as components. Over time, like we're talking, a long period of time, we'll start phasing out the widgets, but we'll follow our deprecation model where you'll take at least 3 releases once something's deprecated, or not at least, about 3 releases before it's actually removed. So yes, everyone should, I think it's good to be transparent that our plan is, we're fully invested in web components. We do believe it is the path forward, the best path forward based on native browser capabilities and standards. And so that is our path forward. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Jeremy.
Yeah, I think it's important to note this is not like going from 3 to 4. I mean, like Julie said, this is something that's just going to happen naturally. And we have already released our first component only, and that's, like Julie said, this versioning component. So really no difference. Right now, all of our widgets have been wrapped and as web components, and so we're just building off the existing widgets for these components. But over time, we want to make them more completely integrated and just standalone components on their own. But again, this should be a simple change over time for you guys. All right, I'll just see here. Here, Arno, is there line symbology with arrow endpoints available in 3D? They're useful in 2D to show direction of travel and transportation. I'm not sure about line endpoints in 3D. Maybe draped, actually.
Yeah. And
No.
we do
We
for
don't
not
support sim lines.
not sim.
It's not sim, though. It's the
symbology,
it's the
but
basic symbology.
Basic
support of it.
symbology
Yeah.
supports.
So I think it is actually supported
The thing I'm not sure if you can configure that already in Scene Viewer, but it should be
from an
possible
SDK
through the
perspective.
SDK.
It should be there. Yeah. Yep.
Should we take a few audience questions?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Does anybody want to raise their hand?
So bright.
Over here?
Does this work? Yeah,
Oh,
this
yeah.
works.
Mike's, yeah, a good point. Mike's up here, so just come up to the mics and ask questions.
Hi there. Thanks for the great workshop. I had 2 questions. You just answered one about the web components versus widgets. So I only have one question. And that is, you mentioned the new temporal field types like date only and time only. I know this is a JavaScript session, but I think I know the answer. I just want to make sure. Is that across the whole system? So geodatabase, ArcGIS Server Services, ArcGIS Pro Everything?
I'll take this one, Julie. Yes. You know, I've been part of this REST API since the beginning, back in 2008. And this is the first time that we've added new field types, not just to the geodatabase, but also to our services spec. And it was a huge amount of work, but proud of all of the teams from, you know, the pro team to the web team to runtime we'll be having support soon. You know, really work together to support those field types. And I hope we never add another field type again until I retire, after I retire.
Because it's huge.
It's a huge amount of work, but I would say we definitely really tried to nail it. I mean, of course, it's not perfect, but we worked really hard to achieve that. And they're awesome field types, by the way. Like, to be able to have dates that don't get tripped up with time zone is amazing. And then like the advanced case that Julie showed, where you actually have time zone with each feature so that you can look at data across time zones in one view, is super powerful. But yeah, it's in Arcade, it's in the Maps SDK, it's in Web Maps, and you know, we'll be rolling into the other apps over the next couple of releases.
That's really good to know. I think the date only one is going to be especially useful.
Oh
so
yeah, totally.
Thank you. Thanks for all you do.
Yep. Any others? You can just feel free to come up to the mic so that your voice can be recorded forever.
Is there any more online?
Um,
Oh,
yeah, here we go.
Oh, for the people online, maybe. Oh, I can say it for you if you want.
How does the value picker work with the large data sets? Does it use the extend or does it calculate the values right up front?
So the value picker actually doesn't do any of the logic itself. It's just working there to like play through values and stuff, and you basically listen to the event and you do the work to make the queries or filtering and everything. But it is against a very performant, query API, because you have the whole like client-side query engine that's part of the SDK for filtering, queries, statistics, all that stuff. So it's performant just because the API is performant with querying, but it's not tied to the value picker. Does that make sense? Hi.
Yeah, I was wondering about, I guess, incorporating the web components to existing projects. I mean, it clearly makes sense if you're starting a new project and you're not already doing other things, or doing things a different way. But I imagine, if they're going to eventually replace widgets, that the idea is that these web components, at some point you might want to consider bringing a web component into your current React app. And is there considerations with I guess you might want to consider there's probably some extra libraries you'd be importing. So, I was wondering if you have any thoughts or recommendations.
I can take that one, Julie, or start and you can take it. I think it's a really good question, how to integrate web components into an existing app. And, just to be honest, so none of our web apps yet have been built on web components. And that will be happening over the next few releases. I think some of the instant apps will probably be first. The scene viewer would like to go there. Map viewer also would like to go there. So we're also dealing, with this, and we'll be, working through time. That's why I definitely don't want you to get stressed about like widgets are going to go away. They're going to be around for a while. And I do think it makes a lot of sense for new applications. And then for existing applications, I think it's something worth exploring. I mean, we will be upgrading our existing apps, like I said, but we're not in a rush to do that.
Yeah, I also want to highlight a few sessions. I highly recommend you attend. Everybody attends this session. This is a favorite, I guess, Jeremy. Best practices for building apps. Well, there'll be a lot of discussion there about what's the best way today? What are the considerations? What's the tooling? How do you work with web components? There's a lot. This is a really good session presented by Renee Rubalcava to kind of address some of those patterns and decisions you have to make. I've done it. I guess to add to what Jeremy said, I think it is definitely like application based. Like there's no need to like have the pressure that you need to move it. But you know where I started, because I'm learning a lot of this stuff, is I'm taking samples and I'm converting them, like existing samples, converting them to use web components, and it's not a huge undertaking because they're simple apps. But I don't think it's like it's not an application rewrite either, even for the sophisticated app. I'd like to talk to you after the session about your scenario, but it's definitely like a case-by-case basis and really your need.
All right,
working
Julie.
with React too.
And you
is
could do it gradually, I guess.
Yeah, you could do it gradually.
And there's a lot of benefits when you're working with React specifically.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we're at 2 o'clock. I hope this was a good kickoff for the week, but yeah, enjoy your week and definitely come to the island, talk to the team, and thank you.